So tonight I'm joined by two people who are going to kind of run this with me, which is Aviv Goldsmith. We work together on the board of Aiki Extensions. He has one of the most fabulous dojos I've ever out in Fredericksburg in Virginia. Sixth Dan, amazing man, works tirelessly for good, and I'm really honoured that he's here. And he's taken on the mantle of trying to promote Aiki Peace Week now and in the future. And Paul Linden, who we all know quite well if you've regularly been attending these sessions, was the co-founder of Aiki Peace Week, International Aiki Peace Week. And so he'll tell us a little bit about that in due course. But the good news is that I get to shut up now and I get to pass across to Aviv, who'll kind of introduce the subject.
Thank you, Quentin Sensei. It's really interesting to me because Aiki Peace Week is an interweaving of four different stories, the way that I look at it. And from a historical perspective, everybody knows that Sensei was a philosopher and an avid student of psychology and spirituality. And most of us are very familiar with this little book called The Art of Peace. And Aikido is often called the art of peace. But Sensei's thoughts were pretty esoteric. But I'm going to take the screen here and show some photos as I speak. Sensei and this other gentleman named Goi Sensei had a common student. And Goi Sensei was also a philosopher and a spiritualist. And Goi Sensei believed that thoughts become words and words become deeds. And so he felt that every day, everybody should be saying a short peace prayer, just simply, may peace prevail on earth. And it's a very interesting story when this mutual student of Sensei and Goi Sensei had them meet. They met for tea. And Sensei greets him, and Goi Sensei says, "I am the universe." This is his opening line. And then Sensei says, "I know." Now, holy smokes, what a more powerful thing than that. And based on Goi Sensei's teachings, there are several international nonprofits that have been founded, including the Goi Peace Foundation and the World Peace Prayer Foundation. And there we go. There's somebody. Chris is holding up a peace pole. And so basically, these thoughts are that you should say, "May peace prevail on earth," once a day, high noon typically. And around the world, there are followers of this. So these guys met, I think, in the 60s. And in 1981, second thread of the story, 1981, the UN established the International Day of Peace, September 21st. Now, of course, the UN is going to be pro-peace, but even getting that declaration was a challenge. And many people now around the world are celebrating September 21 as the International Day of Peace. Thread 3 of this story, at the Iwama Dojo, where Aikido was developed, is the Aiki Peace Shrine. And at the Aiki Peace Shrine is a peace bowl. And the peace bowl has in 4 languages, "May peace prevail on earth." It has it in Japanese, "Heiwa de arimasu yoni," and in 2 other languages. And I was there training in 1997, and one of the women from the community came and said, "We're going to have a peace celebration." I thought, that's great, fantastic. But everybody needs to participate. One of my students was a former military officer, and he was all concerned that, I can't participate in a protest. I said, well, don't worry, just watch it, and if you're comfortable, you'll participate in it. And what we did is called the World Peace Prayer Flag Ceremony. And all 193 nations of the UN. And right now there's 5 others that are in the ceremony. You carry their flags and you say, may peace prevail in the United Kingdom. May peace prevail in Kenya, whatever the name of the country is. And this is right here at the birthplace of Aikido. So it was really interesting to me when we established our dojo here in the US. So we got a peace bowl. And we've had several ceremonies even before we formally built our new dojo, which was in 2009. And in 2010, we held our first peace ceremony using the World Peace Flag outline. And it's actually a practice that we do in our dojo every year now around September 21st. So Aiki Peace Week. And we also use it as an opportunity to have outreach events in the dojo. In 2010, Aiki Extensions, building on the work of Paul Linden Sensei and Bertram Mohak, formally adopted the phrase International Aiki Peace Week and began promoting it around the world. And Paul, you ready to take over here?
Sure. Okay. Where it started, by the way, for those of you who don't know me, I have Parkinson's, and if I shake, that's what I was here for, to shake things up. So Bertram Mohak and I were talking one day. He was an Aikidoist in Munich, and we hit it off. He was a body worker as well. We had very similar ways of thinking. And we were talking about how much diverse and disputatious energy there was between the different Aikido organizations. And there's a great phrase in the 60s, fighting for peace is like fucking for chastity. There were all these Aikidoists who were fighting about the right way to achieve peace. We decided we wanted a project that we could all get behind. I don't remember whether it was me or Bertram. One of us said, what about something about peace? And then it escalated and we decided to do something international around peace. And that's what we tried. The problem was that people don't understand what peace is, that it has to start in the body, we thought. And so that it was like talking to refrigerators. Even many Aikidos don't work on the level of the internal peace process. So we got stymied. Bertram unfortunately passed on, and I went off to do some more body-oriented stuff on my own. So I'm glad to see the Peace Week is still happening. Someday we will achieve peace, I guess. Maybe tomorrow.
Maybe today.
Today.
Could be.
So I'm going to put a question out generally to everybody. So this is, you can unmute yourself if you've got something you want to say on the subject. Is what do you how do you relate Aikido to peace? What has Aikido got to do with peace as far as you're concerned?
Well, since I started this stuff, I think Aikido gives you an opportunity to be attacked. And the natural reflex is to dehumanize and hate or fear the attacker. In Aikido, we have specific ways of feeling compassion and calmness toward the attacker. And that is the foundation for being able to do it even to normal people who are not Aikidoists.
Thank you, Paul. Others? Anyone else want to respond? Does anybody see a relationship between Aikido and peace? It's pretty essential for this session, at least, that maybe you do.
Well, Quentin, in my experience, peacemaking is embedded in Aikido. When we end an attack, when we end a defense, we're not adding a finishing blow or intentionally causing injury, as so many others martial arts do. And so it's intrinsic to what we do, even if it's not explicit.
But I think as well, Quentin, that at the very heart of Aikido is harmony and love and the ability to put yourself in the other person's place, and also that, I've said this to you many times, you've heard me say it many times, is it's very frustrating when you sort of talking on these sometimes massive issues like world peace, and I live in a tiny little village on top of a big hill with a population of maybe 125, and I have a little bit of influence in my village, but sod all influence in the wider town further away. And I've always said that I'm like a candle. I can light other candles, and hopefully they'll light other candles. And so we sort of spread out very slowly and quietly, and hopefully that has an impact on the society that we live in. So we can all do that in a little way, and the more candles we light, the better. So I think it is intrinsically a part of Aikido, the peace ethic.
Yeah. Fred, I see you've unmuted.
Yes, so when I came to University of New Mexico 2 years ago, I became involved in an initiative of the Associate Dean of Engineering here that he calls Peace Engineering. And he grew up in a violent environment in Bolivia, but managed to, get his education nonetheless, and has been in New Mexico now for quite a long time, and put together a consortium of universities, the Peace Engineering Working Group, American and European universities, and significantly the two big national laboratories here in New Mexico, Sandia and Los Alamos, figuring that since New Mexico was the place of origination of the atomic bomb, that it would be most appropriate for New Mexico to be the center of a movement to reform engineering education, so away from simply preparing people to work for the what's it called, the military-industrial complex, or teaching engineers to build cool things without any regard for the social consequences of their inventions. So in a minute, I get to the idea of a peace industrial complex, but the idea is to expose engineering students to more social sciences and humanities curriculum. And of course, as we've had symposia and proceedings and whatnot in the Peace Engineering Initiative, I've injected a great deal of Aikido-oriented material into that that's been well received. The thing is, the sticking point is that it doesn't matter what the engineering students or graduates invent, because there is always somebody looking how to weaponize it. And almost anything they invent or that we invent can be weaponized. So I'm getting to the view that peace engineering is practically impossible, but morally we have to try. So connecting to Aikido, there are now, what, 2 million Aikido practitioners in the world. But I think there has to be many, many more if we're going to make any impact with the kinds of things we're talking about today. Many more than 2 million.
Yep.
And that's just assuming that, referring to Paul's comment that the Aikido people are getting along with each other.
Well, one of the things that I often say is that Sensei said Aikido was a way to reconcile the world. And I reckon he was probably fairly smart, and he probably didn't think that the whole world would come to the mat. So I reckon it's the job of the 2 million we hope to grow to get off the mat and start doing what you're doing and introducing the ideas into everyday spheres. And that's exactly the job I think we have to do.
Well, I agree, but I would hope that, we can have more than 2 million getting off the mat.
I agree. Liz, you are muted.
Quentin?
Yep, your turn.
So is it my turn or is it?
It is. Go for it.
Okay, thank you. So no Alec tonight. He sends his apologies. He's gone to look after his mum in Coventry. He came out of hospital a week or so ago after a major operation. Yeah, one thing that strikes me is that with Aikido, we practice so intensively, don't we, to learn calmness and to move and live without fear. Yeah, and actually that then takes conflict out of situations, and you can actually then promote peace. But unless it builds our courage, it builds our lack of fear, it builds our calmness, so that we can promote peace in the world without reacting in the ways that people generally expect us to react. If they threaten you, they expect you to react in a way as if you've been threatened, don't they? And when you don't react in that way, then you start to change the agenda. Something else just occurred to me as well. It was just this discussion about engineering in the military. I remember reading something from the classics that the Romans believed that if you wanted peace, you had to prepare for war. And actually, so many of our Aikido exercises come from a martial arts past, don't they? That you're preparing for war. So you have that physical confidence if somebody attacks you. And I'm not quite sure I've connected all the dots on that yet, but there might be a similar principle involved.
Okay, thank you, Liz. Right, I suspect that there's probably most of us in the room would agree that Aikido does have a strong relationship with peace. But just to be contrarian, is there anybody out there who would want to offer an alternative view?
Sure, I'm definitely contrarian. I think all the Aikido techniques are basically killing techniques, and if you don't recognize that, how can you overcome the urge to kill? If you don't practice with the mind that when you deliver a shomen, you're trying to hurt somebody in a particular way. When you do the yokomanuchi shionage, you're trying to control them or break them in a certain way. It's by confronting that urge within us that we get a chance to tame it.
Yeah, I agree.
Exactly why that point, what the Romans said, came back to me.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Just happy to join the conversation. It's just reminding me, I had a student, this was years ago, and of course I had the women's dojo, and it was in the 80s, and everyone was so politicized and feminized and feminist, you know, in every way. And I had a student, she was actually English, Quentin, everybody, and she quit. She was one of my best students, and she got to like brown belt, my favorite uke, absolutely adored her. She was so good. Actually, she got to Shodan, and she quit. And she quit because she had a conscientious objection to attacking and the fact that we practiced attacks. And it was kind of like, well, just a second. I mean, she didn't like, I mean, it was half the time, right? We attacked, we were the attacker. And it was like, well, how do you want us to practice if we don't have an attacker? I mean, that's the whole point. We have to practice conflict and attack and violence. And what do we do in that situation? And she just didn't like that we were half the time practicing being the attacker and thought that was wrong. And she quit Aikido over it.
Yep. So Aviv, you've taken on the mantle of promoting International Aiki Peace Week, and you've made it very clear that you think that peace is integral to the practice. Why do you think International Aiki Peace Week should play a bigger part in the Aikido community?
Great question. So if we go from philosophy into action, Aiki Peace Week is a tremendous opportunity for each dojo to focus on peacemaking practices, both within their dojo and also in their communities. Every dojo is looking for new students. Every dojo is looking for new ways to interact with their communities. And Peace Week is a very easy sell. It's something that's can easily be used as a way to connect to others. In our dojo, we typically have a big day of celebration. We have classes, we have demos, brings in lots of people. We do some verbal Aikido, we practice yoga, whatever we can do to engage people. Festival, kids activities. And for us in our dojo, it's not only good public relations, but it's a tremendous recruiting thing. And regardless of political affiliations among dojos, everybody can get behind that peace is good. Aikido can be an instrument of peace. And every dojo can therefore participate and use it to advance their own goals. Just as Paul Sensei said, sometimes dojos don't work together too well, but we found locally that through Peace Week, people can. And Aiki Extensions originally took off with Paul and Bertram's idea and created a website and a Facebook page, which I now manage. And our hope is that as the years progress, more and more dojos can share curriculum, can share resources, and participate in this event. Now, 2020 is an odd year, as everybody knows. And so our own dojos event will be online this Saturday. We'll be doing many of the same things. But anybody can do this, whether you're working on, internal practices like Paul Sensei's embodied peacemaking, or whether you're simply sharing your space, your feeling related practices with your communities. This can be a vehicle to get the 2 million to affect the billions.
And I would like to say I've known Aviv Sensei for many years. He's one of the finest people I know to embody the spirit of peacemaking. So good for you. Good for all of us for you to be there.
Aviv, can people join your dojo's events on Saturday?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What time?
Can you tell us how, where, so that we can?
Right. So
publicize
starts at 10:30 Eastern. We're going to have 2 kids activities, and we'll do a little demo, and then we will ultimately end with an online version of the peace flag ceremony. And the link for our event is on the Aiki Peace Week Facebook page, which I'll share here in a minute. And so anybody can get that information and this year participate with us.
Great. Good.
So that's your Facebook page?
This is a link to the event that I got to from the Peace Week Facebook page.
So there's an International Aiki Peace Week Facebook page, Jamie.
Yep.
And you should be able to guess it there.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Also
on the website?
Yes, it's on our website. One of the great things about the Peace Week website is that it lets people register events. We had some problems this year updating some of the technology, so our dojo's event might be the only one listed, but it is there as well.
Okay, so there are a couple of things I thought it might be worth exploring. Firstly, I want to talk about what you might be doing next year. Let's assume that things are more normal. Let's pretend. Let's hope. And we can envision what we might be doing next year. The other thing I thought it might be worth looking at is actually the history of the United Nations Peace Day, because it wonderfully exemplifies how peace can make a difference in the world. It's just one day, but that one day actually makes a difference. And I wondered if you'd like to cover that, Aviv?
Well, I mean, these are much bigger problems than we have bandwidth for. But, ideally the UN is all about peace, but lots of times what it's about is PIECE instead of PEACE. Every country or institution is interested in creating their own piece of the action. And so just being able to tier off an international body and bring that spirit of peacemaking to the dojos can be quite powerful. One of the great things about the peace flag ceremony is that all 193 member nations of the UN and 5 others are represented. And it's just a simple message. May peace be in every country. May peace be in every community. May peace be with every race. May peace be everywhere. And it all just starts with the thought and the word, and then the actions follow. And Aikido can be a way of bringing that out. Shortly after Aiki Extension's launched Peace Week, there were a lot of participants around the world. And I think the political and psychological spirit of the world at that time was a little bit more positive than it is now. And so I find that as people become more positive, they become more creative and are more willing to put themselves out there and do things like this. Right now, especially with the virus, it's a pretty pessimistic time. And as we see that fade, we'll see more and more dojos reopening, people training, dojo chos looking to engage their communities. And I think we'll see again in the future more and more participation in Aiki Peace Week. And the good thing is, it's not prescribed. On the Peace Week website, there's some sample lesson plans. Paul Sensei has written some. I think Rob has also written some. But anybody can do anything. And if it's done with a pure heart and with the spirit of spreading peace, it's good and it will affect others. And ultimately, it will benefit your own dojo.
I think I've got some up there too. I'm going to come back to the International Peace Day simply because I think it's worth illustrating Piers' point about lighting candles, because that was effectively came about from one man campaigning constantly.
Jeremy Gilly.
Yeah, Jeremy Gilly within the United Nations. So one man made the difference. And that one day makes the difference, because suddenly medics are able to go into war zones and give injections to people and protect them from diseases and deliver food and all this sort of thing. And it just, well, it makes huge difference. Just that one day of peace that is observed. So, you know, if we think Aikido is in a tough position to make a difference, well, there was one man that made a big difference. I think that's always that's inspiring. It's good to know.
Well, there's always an individual that's a driver. O Sensei, Goi Sensei, Paul Sensei. And lots of times it just takes a little bit of time for these ideas to catalyze, and then others coalesce around it and can bring their own skills to the table to make it more accessible.
I want to just say something about kind of the concept of training across borders, which I think was such a brilliant, you know, kind of phrase and concept. And, you know, of course, that's what Aiki Extensions has done. We've been doing this, trying to, you know, use Aikido as an actual peacemaking tool with training across borders. We've had some big conferences, but I mean, that could be, to me, that's a very Aiki Peace Week kind of thing, and a 52-week Aiki Peace Week thing. But just sort of the borders that separate us, and they start in our minds, and then they, you know, they're training across borders in terms of really, you know, bringing people together. And Aikido practice lets us do that, you know, bowing really equally to one another. Well, we're not exactly grabbing hands at the moment, but, you know, our blends, you know, the blend, the becoming one, and the, that there's borders in Aikido, right? We don't train across organizations or, you know, that kind of thing, but just the whole notion of what borders that we have that separate us in our minds and in the ways we relate. I mean, you know, there's like inner cities and the suburbs, and does that relate? Or there's a green line in Israel that you can't cross literally to go into the West Bank or to Gaza and Israel, and just the ways that borders keep us apart, and how do we move across those borders so that we can join and blend and, you know, make peace in that way. So just want to kind of offer that notion in terms of both practice and just, you know, as a kind of a guiding principle towards peace, is to move across borders, train across borders.
Yeah.
I'd like to raise an idea. Aviv was saying that, you know, it always takes one individual to really push for something. There's a fascinating, I think I came across this as a TED talk. There's this idea that while that individual, that typically charismatic, and, you know, there's an important role for the first follower. the first person who, who gets up and starts to dance to the music this other person is playing, as it were, and thereby gives permission for everybody else to do the same. And I think one of the roles that, a dojo can be is the, that first follower in a community, the person jumping up and dancing and saying, actually pursuing peace is okay. Assuming, it's probably a desire for peace is probably resident in everybody to some extent. And whether it's because of some sort of toxic sense of masculinity or whatever reasons why people are afraid to pursue it and be public about pursuing it, it may be sort of the dojo's job in their community to be that permission granting, presence. And Aiki Peace Week is the time for that to be happening and to be public and to be, so it's clearly can resonate, well past the week, in the lives of everybody, who even hears about, what's going on at the dojo. I also wanted to add one of the things I was most interested in when I first heard the idea from Bertram and Paul, and was that this is something that every dojo can do to be the local story. Given that, the September 21st is the Day of Peace, and every local paper or news show at some point wants a puff piece, something to mark the occasion, to say something about it. And if every dojo has the opportunity to be the local story, how that gets shared on the local, TV news show or in the local paper or whatever, and just, it was meant to be something that would be really good, publicity for a dojo who just put in, a couple hours worth of effort and a little bit of curricular something special, and it was something that could, and the more dojos are doing well, the more Aikido is out there, the better off the whole world is.
I think there's one other piece. If you think about Einstein or a Sensei, anybody strange enough to think in a weird but productively new way needs a translator, someone who can translate from Sensei into ordinary Aikido so the rest of us can follow it. And so I think that's another function of the first follower.
So one of the things that I would like from this session is that I hope that everybody on the session today resonates with this and makes sure that they don't just walk away and leave this as an idea. They actually go out and promote this within their own dojos and make sure it happens there. And indeed, these sessions get watched by quite a lot of people, to my amazement. So if you're watching this as a video recording, it's your responsibility to do it as well in your dojos. So that would be great. That would seed Aiki Peace Week for next week, next year, or whenever we actually get to do it properly all over again. So Aviv, do you want to talk a little bit about the future for Aiki Peace Week as far as you're concerned? What you envisage doing with the website, how you'd like to see it promoted, what part we might play here?
Yeah, perfect. We've made the website in the last couple of months very simple. And so you register as a user, and then you can post an event. And as we populate in the future, more and more events and more users, that network will grow. And we said there's 193 nations in the UN. I don't know if there's Aikido in all 193 nations. You'd think that there would be, but wouldn't it be fantastic to have 193 participants from every nation in the UN doing Aikido and participating in Aiki Peace Week? Then we really have a global connection. It was great to have Chris on the call and him volunteering to participate and promote things in Europe. Really, this is a totally volunteer effort, and with local people promoting it and inviting other dojos, we will have more and more participation. And it's not unreasonable to think that we could have close to 193 countries participating. We've had more than that many dojos participating in the past, and we can get back there. It's all about a common vision, which is world peace, or peace in your own community, and the role that Aikido plays in that peace. Sharing that vision and communicating and supporting others who have the same vision. So that's where we're going with it. The website is just one very simple networking tool. The Facebook page has over 1,000 likes on it. And so it's just about getting people to think beyond themselves, beyond the issues in their own dojo, and communicate with other dojo and with their communities.
Would you like, Aviv, to post the links into the chat for the Aiki Peace Week website and also for the Facebook group? I'll chat while you're looking those up.
Right. The Peace Week website has already been posted, and I will be glad to post the Facebook site as well.
Yeah. So maybe click on those before you go, guys, and make sure that you sign up if you're not signed up. And again, I'm going to open it up to you guys and say, well, what would you like out of Aiki Peace Week? What would you like to see happen?
Good question.
Quentin, can I just make a quick point?
Yes, please, Hugh.
And it is that listening to different people from different dojos in this COVID era, like right as there is some, certainly in the UK, some opening of a door to allow for distance practice indoors. A number of people are kind of looking at, I won't say reinventing themselves and what the dojo does, but certainly trying to get a slightly different message out today to encourage wider participation, albeit without physical contact. And that's actually a very interesting challenge, particularly for the folks who have who've been kind of rather on one side of the fence, treating Aikido just purely as a physical activity. And so in relation to the discussion today, the only thing I'd say then is somebody made the comment that the Aiki Peace Week can prove an attraction to newcomers. So my suggestion would be to try and really push a very simple message, and really by that, in the digital world, a simple message on one page somewhere explaining why it is useful for every dojo to be involved in this thing and how it will help that dojo. Rather than, I mean, of course, equally asking dojos to support Aiki Peace Week, but by saying Aiki Peace Week can help you, I think lends a very strong message, and it's very timely as people go about their new form of presentation.
Okay, so the interesting thing is that we are now 52 weeks away from the next Aiki Peace Week. So I would like to help people before then, and I think Jamie was making the comment about TAB being a 52-week Aiki Peace Week. And so it's interesting that we should maybe be marketing this now, with the idea of getting the message out that peace is cool and we have a big celebration at the end of the year. I like the idea that there's a marketing opportunity out there. And
well, I think, yeah, I just say to that, to me, what I was trying to say, it doesn't feel like 52 weeks away to the next date. You know, it's happening now, and the point is the theme of peace in Aikido, which may be lacking in some of the practices that we've been involved in our over the years, is absolutely opportune.
Yeah.
To take it day by day and week by week going forward.
Yeah.
And does anyone have any ideas what we can do to support Aikidoists in countries where there are violent conflicts going on right now? I'm thinking of Ukraine and Lebanon and Mali, and there are active Aikidoists there, and they have their Facebook pages too. But what can we do not just to maintain peace in the regions where peace more or less currently exists, but to help our brethren in the countries where it doesn't.
Yeah, Jamie, do you want to answer that?
Well, I don't have a specific in terms of what we can do to help, people in those zones. I mean, one of the things that we've done with Training Across Borders and with Aikido practice is to say, how do we look at nonviolent conflict resolution? So, and I think what I wanted to say, it's not quite specific to that, but I really feel, and I'm writing a book right now, and the more I'm into the book, it's like, and I look at COVID, I look at climate crisis, I look at wars, is that I think we really need to be a voice for a change in mentality. And what I mean by that is that this whole shift to Aiki, to peace, shalom, is from the root word in Hebrew for wholeness, oneness. So, we've been in this separation, consciousness, and this idea of oneness isn't just some spiritual idea. I mean, COVID lets us know, the climate crisis lets us know that we have global problems, we have global issues. There's no time, even 52 more weeks, to wait around to, start to understand that we really do need to, cooperate. We need to love each other. We need to see that we're all one. We need to see we're all dependent on the same environment. That just because we have a different color skin or a different religion or nationality doesn't mean that we really are different. We can't afford to be enemies, to be separate, to be competitive in a way that, I win, you lose. I mean, if I don't wear a mask, and you don't wear a mask, it's like, we infect each other, and then we continue to propagate a disease. The emissions that we make here affect the air and water, et cetera, everywhere in the ozone. So, I mean, the problems that we have today really require immediate shift in consciousness to oneness, despite our differences, or that our differences are just part of the sort of the 10,000 things, a manifestation of diversity in oneness. But we really have to shift our consciousness, and I think that's what Aiki is. That's what blending is. That's what joining, cooperating is. And so for me, it's about right now not being afraid to sound too spiritual or too new age or too anything. This is super practical, that we need a consciousness of oneness, and that's got a global awareness, and that we really do all affect each other, and that we're all part of the solution as we shift our mindset and our heart set, all that stuff. So I don't know, I hope I'm making sense here, but I really think that that's what this is about. And again, I always go to the Hebrew, the shalom. Everyone knows the word shalom, or the Arabic, really, salam. And it's from the root word of wholeness. And so we really do need to start working in much more of a oneness idea, and joining hands, and not in any way that's fluffy or foo-foo, but it's so practical, because we're not going to get out of a pandemic. We're not going to have a world to live in unless we shift to that consciousness. And I think that's what Aikido is about. I think that's what Sensei recognized during, World War eras and first nuclear explosions that were so devastating. And Einstein, Bertrand Russell, these guys were talking about this 100 years ago, and, medicine for a sick world kind of thing. So again, I hope I'm making sense, but I really think that we need to start being real voices for that. And we can come from a very grounded place and a practice that helps people do that, a philosophy and a practice, which is Aikido.
In English, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Paul.
In English, the root word from the Anglo-Saxon HAL is the word that is the source of holy, whole, heal, health, and hail, as in hello. So it's the same. It's the unity.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But the question is, yes, you're preaching to the choir here. What do you do about the people who don't believe in science or global warming or anything? Till we're all off the cliff. That's the hard thing, to get them to experience it.
Yeah, so Fred, you were asking about what can we do to support Aikidoists in other places. And I think it's important to think globally, as Jamie said, but also to act locally. If you can develop a personal relationship with a group somewhere, Aiki Extensions and others have, sent mats, have sent gis. I've brought Joes to the group in Jamaica, and you know, do what you can to support a group. Obviously, you can't help everybody all the time, but you'd be surprised how a small connection, a small donation of resources or guidance can make a big difference. And I mean, even here in the US, we see dojos closing due to COVID, and providing spaces for others to train. Whatever you can do to help a group, those ripple effects will go out and out and out in the spirit of Aiki Peace Week.
Yeah.
Sounds very wise. Thanks. Yeah.
I wanted to add to that. I was going to say that it's coming back to Piers's point. You can sometimes feel a bit helpless in solving the world's problems, and the answer is you probably can't, but you can make a difference to yourself and the people around you. And Aiki Extensions is happy to help where it can, but what it needs is someone like you to say, do you know what? I'm going to reach out to a dojo in Mali, and I'm going to let them know that there are people out there that care, and put them in touch with Aiki Extensions and find out what they need to help. So
Yeah.
we need energy from the people who are on this call and elsewhere to support this work, because it won't happen because a board of Aiki Extensions consisting of about 5 people says we think peace is a good thing, or Aviv decides to do it all on his own. It needs a communal effort. And that means all of us putting in some time and energy. Jamie, did you want to say something else?
Yeah, I really want to say something about it, which is that I don't know. More and more, I feel like it's just so important to stand up in some stronger, clearer ways, just because our issues are so urgent right now. And, you know, are we going to make it, basically? So, for example, I remember when I was kind of trying to get people in Israel and Palestine to go to a Training Across Borders conference. And I remember talking to one, it happened to be an Israeli, a teacher, and I invited him. He's a great Aikidoist. And he said, you know what? We don't need to get on the mat with them. It was like, what? So, you know, you can practice Aikido. The guy was like a 5th Dan, I hate to say. And his attitude was, for all his Aikido practice, was, well, yeah, but we don't need to get on the mat with them. Like, to actually get on the mat and train with a Palestinian. And so I was kind of stunned by that. I don't think that our Aikido practice necessarily brings us into a peaceful or a harmonious place where we're going to join and get past our fears and stereotypes and separations. And I also don't think that, you know, there's also people who don't do Aikido who do have that mentality of like, whoa, we really got to get together here. So I'm feeling like it's even more important, and Aiki Peace Week brings this into focus for me, of standing up in a way to really stand up and say, you know, I'm for peace, I'm for getting together. And we have a practice to do that. So it's not necessarily that because we do Aikido or that a dojo is really about, you know, a joining or an inclusivity. Like, a big conversation right now in Aikido is diversity and inclusivity. I think that's really important. So how do we be more inclusive? How do we really take that essence from Sensei about the art of peace into our practice, and take that message, that part of Aikido, actually into our own Aikido, but also into the world, as we're being Aikidoists in the world. So for me, that's a lot what Aiki Peace Week is about. And I feel it's more important than ever to take a stand and not be afraid to do that, or to think that it's political or anything like that. I just really think that this oneness is absolutely vital. I mean, it's at a survival level right now.
Yeah. And with that in mind, if people want to carry on this conversation, Aiki Extensions has just launched something called Mighty Networks. And it's a way where people like you guys can come together, and if you're interested in taking Aikido off the mat, it might be Aikido and peacemaking. We have a group for that. You can go in and say, well, I think we need to do this, or how are you doing? You can ask questions, you can tell people what you're doing, you can start conversations, you can start building networks. I put a link in there. it doesn't cost you anything to kind of sign up and start a conversation of something that's important to you. I hope you do. Take advantage. I kind of feel we've reached a really nice point in this conversation. So as I always do, I open it up for final comments from people. But otherwise, thank you so much for coming, and thank you for your contributions, one and all. So final chance for people to speak.
Right, I'd like us to end with everybody saying, the World Peace Prayer. May peace prevail in, and you fill in the blank.
Okay. So we all say our own thing, or
Yes, yes.
Do we want to do it in sequence?
Great.
Do you want to lead it?
Okay, may peace prevail in Spotsylvania.
May peace
prevail in Williamstown.
In myself and in the world.
May peace prevail in me and the people I know and everybody I don't know.
May peace prevail in our hearts and minds.
Yeah, may peace prevail in little old Cold Harbour and big old UK.
Fred.
May peace prevail in my heart and the hearts of others.
Okay, Frank.
May peace prevail in Africa and all over the world.
Kevin.
May peace prevail in my heart and in U.S. politics.
Well, yeah, right.
Amen.
Liz.
Quentin, yes. May peace prevail in the Brexit negotiations.
Goodness, yes. Hugh.
May peace prevail in Lebanon.
Finn, would you like to unmute?
Yeah.
You've videoed, you haven't unmuted.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that you need to find peace in yourself first.
Yes.
That's what I think. Because I'm from point of view of a special needs population, which my biggest concern. We need to find personal peace in ourselves, because I know a lot of find peace within themselves first.
Yes.
Before start sharing with anybody, because I strongly believe that you have to start working on your peace inside, and this way you can share it with the others.
Vitaly, that's your first contribution this evening, but a good one. Thank you very much. Steve. Steve, would you like to unmute? Well, while you do that, I'm going to go back to Finn. Come on, Finn.
May peace prevail in Eden Cottage and ever-widening ripples.
Sounds good to me. Linda.
There we are.
Oh, Steve first.
Yes. All I say, peace be with you all and love to you, everyone.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Linda. Oh, we can't do the lip reading. You have to.
There we go. I unmuted myself, but that didn't help. Thank you. May peace prevail in each of us after the election.
I'm not sure who's just joined us, but it's not the best time to have joined us.
He's one of my students who was trying to get in. I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
you'll have to get him to watch the recording, Frank. So,
Yeah, I'll too.
Okay, so thank you everybody for your contributions. Next week we've got a really lovely gentleman who's a bit of a master in Tai Chi. His name's Tu Bunag. He reminded me of the Dalai Lama. And he's going to talk about yin yang, because that's a big part of Tai Chi and it's talked about all the time there. But somehow it's got lost in Aikido. It's rarely talked about. And yet it's, I think, built in, hardwired in. It'd be nice to know a little bit more about it and how we can relate it to our study. The week after that, we've got Mary Heine, part 2 of the interview. And the week after that, I'm doing a session with Jamie. Jamie, do you want to just give that a bit of a title?
Yes, sorry. Yeah, we'll be talking about Aikido as somatic body practice, the whole body-mind connection, holistic principles, lifestyle ways of being. So sort of somatics and holistics, and how Aikido is a practice and a path of that, and how that shows up in different ways, different ways that we live, different ways that in our work, and how we can really be forces for somatics and holistic lifestyles in the world.
So quite a big topic. And I'm in the process of lining up a date with Linda Holliday, who many of you will know, and we'll be doing a session on gratitude and the part that might play in our practice. So I've got a little bit lined up to keep us busy for the next few weeks, and I hope to see a few of you then. Otherwise, bye-bye one and all.
Thank you, Quentin, and
Bye,
thank you,
Janice.
Aviv Sensei.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Many thanks all.
Bye-bye.
Mhm.